Good day, my friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion coming to you from Hollywood, California. How are you all doing today? Yep, as you saw in our last vlogs, we finished up Route 66. As we were coming into town, we stopped off and saw my pal Shelly Winter's house that is now gone. And it started making me think about some of the stories that she told me while she lived there. One of which, well, a couple of which about Marlon Brando, and it got me thinking about how she told me when he first moved to Hollywood to come out here to be in his first movie called The Men, that he actually lived at a veterans hospital and then moved in with his aunt and grandma. You would think he was actually a big star on Broadway before that. You would think he would come here, get his own place, and just be a man about town, but no, I'll tell you the story. Daze with Jordan the Lion begins right now. Welcome back to LA. Since where we're vlogging today is pretty much Eagle Rock, I wanted to come over to my favorite coffee shop, or one of my favorites, Pat Lorraine's. This was in Reservoir Dogs. This is where they have their big meeting at the beginning. This is the diner. They have some great food. I love their breakfast. So here it is, and that is where they ate, right there. That's where they're having the whole opening conversation. The clock back there was in the movie. Yeah, this place is great. And they do have matchup shots. So I actually get that table right there where they ate. She's like, are you here for the movie? I go, well, I've eaten here many times, but I love it because of the movie. She said, okay, go ahead. So you have to understand a little bit of Marlon Brando's life. Marlon was Marlon Brando Jr. And so his nickname as a boy was Bud. He was always called Bud. And his mother loved to act and actually ended up running the Omaha community theater where they lived. And so she, always had her hands dabbling in that. His father was kind of a bit of a drunk, but apparently what happened was that their father got a new job in Illinois and needed to move the whole family, and his mother didn't want to go because she had friends and she was, kind of involved in that acting community. But she did it, and once they did, both parents ended up becoming pretty bad alcoholics. Marlon would say that his father would beat his mother a lot growing up, and that he would always be told he was good for nothing. He would always be ridiculed by his father, always, because of the alcohol and everything. And would invariably see when he would go to school, when kids would get picked on, he would end up standing up for those kids all the time. That was like one of the things that his teachers would say, that he stood up for the weaker kids. And actually, one of the kids that he became friends with was Wally Cox, who eventually became a well-known actor, and they were best friends their whole life. I even read a story where they said that Marlon stole his ashes from Wally's wife and kept them in his bedroom until he died. So Marlon had kind of a crazy life, and he was kind of a crazy guy anyway himself, always kind of searching for approval. But his mother finally ended up leaving his father, and they moved out to California. But then the parents reconciled and they moved back. And the same kind of things continue, where Marlon would see his father abusing his mother, and he would actually say he would spend a lot of his high school days getting his mother out of jails and out of beer halls because she was just so out of control. It was sad. Eventually, one night though, his father was going at it with his mother again, and Marlon ran upstairs, grabbed the gun, came down and pointed his dad's head and said, if you do it again, I'm going to kill you. And so his dad stopped, and they actually sent Marlon off to a military school because he, around the same time, had driven his motorcycle through the high school and had been expelled. So he went to military school in Minnesota, and then when a visiting captain came through, he was disrespectful to him, was sent to his room as a punishment, and he snuck out and then was kicked out of the military school. So he eventually just got jobs working as like an elevator operator and different things. And then his sister was in New York, and she was an actress. And so Marlon's mother, Dodie, talked his father into financing Marlon to go to New York and study acting as well, which is where he became a method actor. And it's also where he would get his big break. He would first start with I Remember Mama, and then a couple years later he heard about Elia Kazan doing A Streetcar Named Desire. They had originally wanted to get John Garfield for that, which I actually told a little bit about. John Garfield was a big actor in his day for that part, but he wanted too much. He wanted too much money. He had too many requests, and so Marlon found out about this, went over to Tennessee Williams' house, who was the writer, and said, I want to audition for this. He auditioned and then fixed everything that was broken in Tennessee Williams' house and ended up getting the part, which is pretty crazy because that is like the defining role for Marlon Brando. That's what ended up getting him invited eventually out to Hollywood to make The Men, which he would end up living right up the street here. But it's crazy because he also, you know, at the time that he was rehearsing for Streetcar Named Desire, he was working out at a gym that the famous boxer Rocky Graziano worked out at, and he left tickets for him to come see A Streetcar Named Desire, and Rocky went to see it, and then afterwards said, that SOB was me. I went to this play and I see the kid from the gym up there on the stage and he's portraying me. And that was basically Marlon's whole idea behind acting. He was a method actor and everything, the whole Strasberg thing, but he would imitate people that he knew and then develop his character from there. And he would be known when he came out here. People knew that he was really rough around the edges. He was known to like pick his nose in interviews and cuss and, you know, dress really down, just never kind of falling in line. And so I'll tell you, once we get done with breakfast, what he decided to do when he got cast for The Men. I'm actually noticing as I look around that the pie case wasn't there in the movie. From the photo up there, there was like a just a white support pole that went there. I highly recommend this place. They are always super friendly here. It's a real hometown diner. It's never like super packed or anything. Not when I've been here anyway, but it's all kind of like local Eagle Rock regulars. Wow, that is a brunch fit for a king. It's 11 a.m., so I'm gonna consider this brunch. Woo! Got a ham and cheese omelet and some home fries and a homemade biscuit. Yeah, there is an interesting kind of side story. Marlon's mother, actually Marlon said it was credited as getting Henry Fonda into acting when she was, you know, running that Omaha local theater. He was home from school, home from college, and she knew him and talked him into being in one of the plays, and that was the first thing he was ever in. I just noticed this. It's kind of funny. If you look up above the Welcome to Pat Lorraine's, there's a convertible on the left that has Tony Montana, and the convertible on the right has Michael Madsen. I never put two and two together. Those are the similar cars. So 1949, Marlon was cast in The Men, and The Men was going to be a starring vehicle for him where he played a quadriplegic in a wheelchair, actually paraplegic in a wheelchair, who is struggling with being a veteran who can't do the things he used to be able to do. So they wanted to put him up in a posh hotel for the filming. Stanley Kramer, the producer, did, but he said Marlon adamantly fought it and said, no, I have to go live with the veterans in the Veterans Hospital. So he insisted and did go to the Birmingham Veterans Administration in the Valley, basically lived as a paraplegic. What he did was he was in one of those rooms with 32 beds, was treated just like everyone else, would spend all of his day either in a wheelchair or in leg braces because he was training for different parts of the movie. And he said that basically he just adapted to being one of the guys. He was actually eligible age-wise to go to World War II, but he had had a leg injury from the military academy and they deemed him, was it 4F or F4? And so he wasn't able to, but here he would bond with the guys because they love to play practical jokes. They love to like push each other over in their wheelchair and stuff. They love to, this was kind of odd, they would have water fights with syringes and he would always participate in those. So that for 4 weeks is how he prepared for the filming of The Men. Now what's interesting is everyone knew from Broadway he was going to be an up-and-coming star. So Life magazine actually sent a writer and photographer to come out and talk to Marlon during that time, follow him, and after he left there, once he started filming the movie, he would end up living at his aunt's house because, as Shelley told me, everyone in his family said he couldn't be trusted to live alone. My friend Shelley Winters knew Marlon from his New York days, and when he was struggling before he was even in a streetcar. And she told me this story actually about how he was training for streetcar, and she and her girlfriend were invited to go over and hang out with him and his roommate. I forget who the roommate was at the time, but she said they went over there for dinner, and we got there, she said it was freezing cold in his apartment. They had to save money. They weren't paying for the electricity bills or anything. Said that Marlon's father was helping him with money and would give him a certain allotment of money, and to save the money, he just wouldn't pay the electric bills. So she said throughout the night he's wearing a white tank top, like a wife beater tank top. And she said all night long he kept going over and grabbing his dumbbells and like lifting. She goes, he would do it constantly, and that's how he would stay warm. And she said, finally I said, Marlon, I'm gonna have to go. I can't take this. I can't take the cold. And he goes, I know how to keep you warm. And I said, how was that? And she goes, how do you think? So she knew how kind of irresponsible or how he was with his money. So when I tell you about this, you're gonna kind of understand. So the actual first house that Marlon would live in Los Angeles was this one. This is where Life magazine came out and filmed, well, photographed him, I should say. Forgot they're not vloggers. But there are some great photos of him right there on that doorstep, like sitting right there in front of that door. The time the house was all white, but there's photos of him sitting right on the step. There's photos of him actually coming out and kind of like greeting his grandmother at the doorway. They have all kinds of photos of the inside, which it's kind of funny. They said in the notes that they eventually found, because a lot of the photos weren't used. They said in the notes that they found, the writer said that Marlon was wearing his grandmother's bathrobe in the photos that he's sitting at the breakfast table, and she was horrified because it was her robe. Now, they wrote about him and said, however infantile or irresponsible Brando may be in his personal life, he's totally conscientious artist in his work. Unlike some of Hollywood's pretty people, he was never late on set, never indulged in a tantrum, and never required endless retakes. They said his salary, for the soundest of reasons, has been sent to his father. He actually did reconcile with his father because his mother and father had both went into AA. So it said that his salary, for the soundest reasons, has been sent to his father, Marlon Brando Sr., who invests the money in cattle on a Midwestern ranch called Penny Poke. Each week, Marlon Brando Jr. receives a living allowance of $150 because he rarely looks at money and sometimes pays for a package of cigarettes with a $20 bill. He usually is penniless by the second day. Yeah, crazy. Then they also talked about his relationship with the paraplegics and quadriplegics. He said his orientation and adjustment as a paraplegic was so complete that he participated in their sometimes gruesome horseplay with complete freedom. One of the reasons why he was so completely accepted. The pranks included pillow fights and using hypodermic syringes for water pistols. They said once he arrived in Hollywood, no one has accused him of posing. Everyone to whom he's spoken has sort of had a confused respect for him, who has up till now managed to live his life without a care in the world. I saw online that the owners of the house do know the history of it and everything, so that's really cool. But I also found in the Life magazine where they said when he came to town, he was so unpretentious that he showed up with a little imitation leather handbag. That was the only suitcase he had. They said he was wearing a blue worsened suit which had seen much wear and weather. There were holes and tears in the jacket, and as part of Brando was visible through the seat of the pants. What do you think they meant by that? Also said in the article that Marlon's grandmother was quite embarrassed while they were there because of the way that he eats. She said, Bud doesn't bring the food to his face, he brings his face to the food. She said, quoting to them, I do hope that Bud comes through all this without too much scandal. I love him more than anything on this earth, but I never know when I'm going to hear from him in San Quentin. So that's crazy, isn't it, to know that he was super dedicated to his craft, but in everything else in his life, he basically just let it fall by the wayside and didn't care about it. Sadly, apparently one of the main things that he really wanted out of his life was some acceptance by his mother, or something that she could be proud of, and so she actually ended up dying before he won an Academy Award, which apparently just absolutely crushed him, but he was known as one of the greatest actors of all time. And to think that it started here. So I will match up, I'll show you some of the matchup photos, if I haven't already throughout this, of him here. And there's some great photos actually like of him and his grandmother walking right here along this sidewalk, because you can see these houses and you can see the same telephone poles. There's another funny story that Shelley Winters used to tell me. It was much later in Marlon's life, but she told me, she said one night, her and her friend Harvey Sid Fisher, I'm giving Harvey a little shout out here, he's a musician friend of Shelley's, said they were out driving one night because they had just went out to eat and they couldn't sleep, so they were driving all over Los Angeles. She said they went up Laurel Canyon and got to the stoplight up at Laurel Canyon and was at Mulholland, and she said all of a sudden I look over and there's Marlon in a tracksuit, like a workout suit. And I go, Marlon, what the hell are you doing out here? It's 2 in the morning. He goes, oh, Shelley, just let me get in, give me a ride home. She said he was out there trying to lose weight. And so what he would do is he would like go out for like 2 or 3 mile walks, or I mean 2 or 3 hour walks at night. And she caught him at the end of it and he was just totally wiped out. So he wanted her to give him a ride home. Pretty dang cool that the house is still here. So many of the early houses of people are gone, but just to see that the first place Marlon lived is still here. And it was his Aunt Betty's house, actually. His Aunt Betty's house and his grandmother had come to live here, so all three were living here at the same time. I looked up where the Birmingham Veterans Administration Hospital was, and it's actually now where Birmingham High School's athletic field is. Apparently the year after, Marlon was there in 49, the movie The Men came out in 50, and this article also in Life came out in 1950. They saved it for the release of The Men, but when he was there in 1950, a year after he'd been there, they ended up closing the doors and sold it to the LA Unified School District for $1. So I just didn't want to go over and film an athletic field because they're kind of weird about you filming schools, and it's just an athletic field now. If you want to know where it was actually up on the corner of Balboa and Van Owen, I believe. Alright, Lionhearts, we're going to call it a day for this vlog so I can go off and do something else and make another vlog for you. But I hope you guys enjoyed getting to see and hear about Marlon Brando's 1949 Welcome to Hollywood. Pretty interesting. I mean, you got to hand it to the guy and his acting ability. I mean, to turn down a hotel and say, I want to live in one room with 32 beds and other guys and live that life and that experience for 4 weeks, that's pretty commendable. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. Have a great night and goodbye.